Lakers fans, I need you to remember exactly where this story left off, because the ending nobody expected is happening today. Back in February, in one of the most dramatic reversals of the entire NBA season, the Dallas Mavericks traded Anthony Davis to the Washington Wizards in an 8-player blockbuster alongside Jaden Hardy, D'Angelo Russell, and Dante Exum in exchange for Chris Middleton, AJ Johnson, Malachi Branham, Marvin Bagley III, and a pile of draft compensation. That trade was framed at the time as Washington building patiently around two decorated, oft-injured stars in Davis and Trae Young, betting on health finally cooperating. And then on August 6th, Davis officially became extension eligible. Every single insider expected Washington to at least open real conversations about locking him in long term. Instead, according to Josh Robbins of The Athletic, the Wizards made clear that any meaningful extension talks would wait until the 2026-27 season actually begins, not before. That specific, deliberate hesitation, refusing to even discuss long-term money with a 10-time All-Star the moment he becomes eligible, was the loudest signal in the league that Washington's actual internal confidence in this partnership was shakier than anyone let on publicly. And at 12:41 this afternoon, on a live SportsCenter cut-in, Shams Charania told the entire basketball world exactly what that hesitation actually meant. Anthony Davis has been traded from the Washington Wizards to the Los Angeles Lakers. Before you scroll off, I'm telling you right now, by the end of this video, I'm going to tell you the specific reasoning Shams gave for why Washington moved this fast, barely days after that extension eligibility date passed. I'm also going to tell you what Luka posted from his personal account 13 minutes later, referencing history that every single Lakers fan is going to recognize immediately. Stay with me. Do not click off. Here's how it went down. Reese Davis is anchoring a SportsCenter cut-in discussing training camp roster battles across the league when the control room clearly interrupts with real force. He stops mid-sentence. "We have to go to Shams right now. This is enormous." And they cut. Shams delivers, and this is the direct transcript. I want to explain why Washington moved this quickly, because on the surface, trading a 10-time All-Star days after he becomes extension eligible looks strange. My understanding is that the decision to delay extension talks until next season was never actually about patience. It was about the front office genuinely being unresolved internally on whether Davis's specific injury history justified the kind of long-term financial commitment an extension of this size would require. Once Rob Pelinka called with an offer built around draft capital and expiring salary, Washington's front office, still very much in a rebuilding phase around Trae Young's own recovery timeline, decided a real, immediate asset return made more sense than gambling on a multi-year commitment to a player who has played more than 56 games in a season only twice in the last 7 years. This deal is agreed to in principle. Read that back. The decision to delay extension talks was never actually about patience. That is Shams reframing something that was publicly described as a wait-and-see approach into what it actually was internally. A front office genuinely unresolved about long-term risk, which is exactly the kind of nuanced behind-the-scenes read that only comes from real sourcing inside actual front office conversations. And 13 minutes later, as I promised, Luka posted from his personal account, and the history here matters enormously. AD was the guy who helped get us to the finals when I was still in Dallas. Now I get to play with him again, just in a different jersey. Wild how this league works. Let's get to it. Read that back. That is a direct, specific reference to real shared history. Davis and Doncic were teammates in Dallas during that memorable 2024 finals run before the earthquake trade sent Luka to Los Angeles and just months later sent Davis to Dallas in the deal that actually brought Luka back the other way. These two players have already shared a locker room, already shared real chemistry on a deep playoff run, and now, through a chain of trades that touched 3 different franchises, they end up teammates again in a completely different city, on a roster genuinely built to finish what that run started. Now, the whiplash, because I already know what you're thinking. Washington just traded for this guy in February specifically to build around him and Trae Young. How does that reverse itself in 6 months? And here's the honest answer, and it requires being honest about what that February trade actually was from Washington's side. An asset collection move, dressed up as team building. The Wizards, picking up 2 banged-up stars in the same season, were never purely betting on immediate contention. They were betting on optionality. Either the health holds up and you have two genuine stars to build around, or it doesn't, and you've collected enough draft capital in the underlying trades that moving pieces again later still leaves you in a reasonable position. The moment the extension eligibility date arrived and Washington's own hesitation became public, it signaled exactly this outcome was on the table. Stay with me. Because once you understand exactly why Davis fits this specific Lakers frontcourt need, this stops looking like chaos and starts looking like the logical next step in a chain of moves that started with the Doncic trade 18 months ago. 3 reasons Shams was this confident. Reason 3 is where the reveal lands. Reason number 1. The Lakers, since LeBron's departure to Philadelphia, have added shooting, added scoring, added secondary shot creation, but they have genuinely lacked a true dominant defensive anchor at the rim, the kind of two-way force who can protect the paint at an elite level while also providing legitimate offensive versatility as a pick-and-pop threat next to Luka. Anthony Davis, when healthy, remains exactly that archetype, a former Defensive Player of the Year caliber presence who can single-handedly change the geometry of a defense. That is precisely the missing piece this roster has lacked since Luka's arrival. Reason number 2, and this is the tactical detail specific to why JJ Redick's system particularly benefits from this pairing. Redick has spoken extensively about wanting bigs who can both anchor the paint defensively and space the floor enough offensively to keep driving lanes open for Luka. Davis's specific blend of rim protection and reliable mid-range shooting is precisely that two-way profile, giving Redick a legitimate two-way frontcourt partner rather than having to choose between defense and shooting at the 5. And before I get to reason 3, because reason 3 is the specific internal hesitation Shams described, talk to me in the comments. Lakers fans, real question: does Davis's extensive injury history worry you enough to overshadow the obvious two-way talent, especially reuniting him with a player he's already won real playoff success alongside? Go. Reason number 3, the hesitation. Ready? Genuinely unresolved internally on whether Davis's specific injury history justified the kind of long-term financial commitment. Read that back. That is a precise internally sourced explanation of exactly why a team that traded for a star in February wouldn't commit to him in August. Not a generic explanation, but a specific articulation of a real, ongoing organizational debate. When an insider can describe the actual internal disagreement rather than just reporting a transaction, that confirms real access to the decision-making process itself. Now, the skeptic, Stephen A. Smith, predictably erupted. You're bringing back a man who has played more than 56 games in a season twice in the last 7 years. Reuniting him with Luka sounds beautiful on paper, but health is health. This roster cannot afford another injury-prone star after everything you've already built this offseason. And listen, that specific durability concern is completely legitimate and grounded in real, documented history. But here's the counter. When healthy, Davis remains a top 5 two-way big man in this league, full stop, and the Lakers, unlike Washington, are not asking him to be the number 1 option carrying a rebuilding roster. He's walking into a complementary role next to an established top 3 offensive engine in Luka, with genuine shot creation support around him rather than shouldering the offensive burden alone. Reduced burden at this stage of his career is exactly the kind of role most likely to actually maximize his health and availability. Here's the part of this story with real poetic weight. Anthony Davis helped deliver Luka Doncic to the 2024 finals in Dallas. Then fate, in the form of one of the most stunning trades in league history, sent them in opposite directions on the very same day months later. Now, through a chain of transactions that touch Dallas, Washington, and finally Los Angeles, they end up back together on a new roster, chasing a new championship, completing a partnership that circumstance interrupted before it ever got to finish. But I owe you the honest risk. Davis's injury history is real, extensive, and does not disappear because of a compelling reunion narrative. Any team betting real assets on his availability across a full season and playoff run is accepting real documented risk. So let me bring it home. Anthony Davis to the Lakers matters because he provides the two-way rim anchor this roster has lacked since LeBron's decline, because his shooting and defense complement Luka's game precisely, and because Shams' specific description of Washington's internal hesitation confirms genuine sourcing rather than speculation. Luka's own direct reference to their shared history is the receipt that this reunion means something real to both players, not just the front office. Let me go deeper on that Washington side of this, because I think understanding their exact calculus is what makes this whole story click into place. Remember, this is a front office that also traded for Trae Young last season, another decorated oft-injured star, and Young himself has not played since December because of ongoing knee and quadriceps issues. Washington was never actually building a conventional contender around two stars this year. They were running an experiment, collect high-ceiling, discounted talent while their own timeline stayed genuinely uncertain, and see what actually held together by the time real decisions had to be made. The extension eligibility date for Davis was always going to be the first real fork in that road, the first moment where Washington had to put actual tangible long-term money behind one of these bets, or keep everything flexible. They chose flexibility. And once that choice became public through Robbins' reporting about delayed talks, it was basically an open invitation for other front offices to call. Let's talk about what specifically the Lakers reportedly gave up here, because context on the actual cost matters for evaluating whether this is a genuinely smart swing or an overpay dressed up in reunion sentiment. Pelinka's front office, according to Shams, built this around draft capital and expiring salary rather than attaching any of Los Angeles' core longer-term rotation pieces. That's an important distinction. This isn't the Lakers hollowing out their bench or attaching a genuinely promising young piece. This is a front office using exactly the kind of currency, picks, and expiring money that a team with genuine title aspirations should be comfortable spending on a proven two-way star, particularly one they already have real, documented positive chemistry data with from his time playing alongside Luka in Dallas. And I want to spend real time on that Dallas chemistry because I think it's actually the single most underrated piece of basketball logic in this entire trade, more important honestly than the emotional reunion narrative on its own. When Davis and Doncic shared the floor during that 2024 playoff run, the two-man game they built was genuinely elite. Luka's live dribble reads, combined with Davis's rolling gravity and lob-catching ability, created some of the single hardest actions to defend in the entire league that postseason. This is not a hypothetical fit a front office is guessing might work in theory. This is a proven, tested championship-level partnership that real playoff opponents already had to game plan around and, in a lot of cases, simply couldn't solve, which is exactly why this reunion carries so much more weight than a typical off-season addition built purely on projection. Redick's coaching staff doesn't have to hope this chemistry translates. They already have the tape. Let's dig into the specific tactical reasoning a little further too, because I don't think I've fully done justice to exactly how this changes what this roster is capable of defensively. Right now, even after adding real complementary pieces this offseason, the Lakers' defensive identity at the rim has been genuinely inconsistent. A lot of switchable, quick, athletic wings, but no single dominant rim deterrent presence who can bail out a broken defensive possession by simply erasing a shot at the basket. Davis, at his healthy best, is precisely that eraser. Watch stretches of his career with the Lakers originally, or even flashes during his healthier stretches in Dallas. He changes what opposing offenses are even willing to attempt at the rim, forcing teams into contested mid-range looks rather than easy, high-percentage shots at the basket. That single specific defensive value is exactly the kind of margin that turns a good regular season defense into a genuinely elite playoff one. Now here's where I want to push back on the pure optimism a little because I don't think it's responsible to only sell you the upside. The specific injury pattern here is worth naming honestly rather than glossing over. A left adductor strain that cost him 18 games in Dallas. Ligament damage in his left hand that ended his season early this past January. A detached retina requiring surgery the year before that. This is not one unlucky fluke injury a team can reasonably write off as bad variance. This is a genuinely recurring pattern across multiple unrelated body parts, which is a different and more concerning category of risk than a single specific chronic injury a team can build a management plan around. Any honest evaluation of this trade has to sit with that pattern rather than assume this time will simply be different because the storyline is compelling. But here's my honest counter to my own honest concern. The Lakers, unlike Washington, are not asking Davis to be the engine of a rebuild, carrying massive defensive and offensive workload on a team with no other real difference makers around him. He's walking into a genuinely deep, complete roster with Luka as the clear first option and real complementary shooting and depth already established. Reduced offensive burden. Reduced offensive burden being asked to cover for a thin roster. A genuinely professional and stable culture around him. Those are exactly the conditions under which a talented but fragile veteran has the best realistic chance of staying available across a real, meaningful stretch of games, even if a full 82-game guarantee is never something any team can promise itself with this specific medical history.